What if the Duchess of Sussex wasn't just a duchess? What if, before the tiaras and the televised wedding, before the royal photographers and the glossy Spotify deals, there was a very different Meghan Markle, unfiltered, undisguised, and untethered to any crown? And what if that Meghan's past had been carefully hidden until now? Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, just cracked open a door no royal dared to touch. And what spilled out wasn't just scandal. It was a tidal wave. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The kind of story whispered behind silk curtains in Mayfair lounges. Traded like currency between powerful men in Monte Carlo. Denied, deleted, suppressed, but not forgotten. Because, as it turns out, what happened on that yacht wasn't just tabloid bait. It was the origin of an empire built on illusion. And when Fergie finally let it slip, whether by accident or design, she may have triggered a domino effect that not even Buckingham Palace can stop. So grab your tea, or your tequila, because this is the part of Meghan Markle's history she never wanted you to know. And the question is, why now? Why did Sarah Ferguson, the woman who spent decades navigating scandal herself, choose this moment to lift the veil? Was it revenge, regret, or a final warning shot in a long-simmering royal Cold War? Let's rewind. Back to the whispers. Back to the shadows. Back to the glossy decks of a super yacht where the Duchess of Sussex wasn't a duchess at all, but something far more dangerous. A mystery, an illusion, a story just beginning to crack. It started like most royal disasters do, over lunch. A quiet gathering in London. Just a few society women. Nothing dramatic. Until one name slipped into the conversation. Meghan Markle. And Sarah, who'd been sipping her sparkling water politely, suddenly set her glass down a little too hard. She wasn't always like this, she reportedly said. There was another version of her. Back then, a different Meghan. The one I met. A pause. Tension. And then, the yacht days. The room went still. One woman leaned forward. You mean the rumors? Sarah gave a tight smile. They weren't all rumors. That was it. No elaboration. No dates. No specifics. But just like that, the story lit up again. The whispers, the blog posts, the old Reddit threads. And something else, too, an unease. A tension rippling through the palace. Through Hollywood. Through Montecito. Because when Sarah Ferguson hints that a duchess has a past you should be worried about, people listen. Especially when that duchess has spent the last 5 years painting a picture-perfect image of integrity, activism, and quiet victimhood. So what was Sarah really saying? What did she see? And what exactly are the yacht days? Let's be honest. We've all heard the whispers. The internet's been buzzing for years. Reddit sleuths, Dumois submissions, blind items, rumors about Meghan's past ties to Soho House, about luxury yachts, about introductions, about high-paying hospitality gigs that may have meant something else entirely. Most dismissed it. Just noise. Misogynistic trolls. Racist undertones. Old photos twisted out of context. But then came the numbers. That's how many men, allegedly, appeared in one sealed folder passed through private hands, listing names connected to a particular Monaco-based social roster from 2014 to 2016. One of those names? Meghan Markle. Fact or fabrication? That's what we're here to explore. But first, ask yourself this. Why are so many people in powerful circles suddenly terrified of this story resurfacing? Why did a high-profile entertainment lawyer in Los Angeles allegedly send warning emails to at least 2 bloggers last week, threatening swift consequences if they revive the Duchess of Yacht narrative? And why is Sarah Ferguson, normally cautious, deeply loyal to royal discretion, now breaking her own silence? Because here's the thing. Sarah knows what it's like to be humiliated by the press, to be caught on camera in compromising moments, to have her image dissected by every headline-hungry outlet from Fleet Street to Fifth Avenue. And for years, she stayed quiet about what she'd seen, about what she'd heard, until now. So what changed? Sources close to the York camp suggest it wasn't spontaneous, that Sarah had been sitting on a trove of information for years, waiting for a moment. And that moment came when Meghan allegedly made a quiet move behind the scenes. One that affected Sarah's future, her charity ties, and her long-term relationship with the royal firm. Is this about personal vengeance? Or is it about reclaiming a truth buried under years of polished PR? And more importantly, who else is involved? Because this isn't just about Meghan. It never was. Behind the sleek hulls of those Mediterranean yachts lies a network of handlers, influencers, fixers, and elites who thrive on secrecy. People who select, who train, who place. And according to sources, Meghan wasn't just a guest. She was introduced. Which raises another question. Introduced to whom? And for what? At the center of all this sits Soho House, the exclusive members-only club where Meghan forged many of her early connections, where her rise from cable TV actress to elite circles began, where her ties to Marcus Anderson, the so-called global membership director, blossomed into something more strategic. He's been called the gatekeeper, the man who, allegedly, placed Meghan into high-level rooms, private events, and yes, certain luxury yacht invitations. But did Marcus know what those yacht invites entailed? Did Meghan? Or was she simply a pawn in a much bigger game? We're not talking about casual boat parties here. We're talking about international social strategy, high-rolling billionaires, oil magnates, talent scouts, crown princes, the kind of people who don't ask for NDAs. They require them. And according to at least one source, Meghan signed more than one. Why would an aspiring actress, on the brink of 35, with a canceled cable show and no major prospects, be attending back-to-back summer yacht events in the Mediterranean, each one hosted by discreet foreign financiers? For fun, or for something else? That's what we'll uncover. Because this isn't just about the past. It's about the present, the narrative, the image, the royalty. Meghan Markle has spent the last half-decade crafting a public identity rooted in activism, authenticity, and altruism. But what if the foundation was built on something else? What if the story you were sold, the royal romance, the outsider-turned-princess, the victim of a cold institution, was only half the truth? And the other half? Well, that's where Sarah Ferguson comes in. Because Fergie's not just stirring gossip. She's pulling on threads. And behind those threads? A world Meghan hoped you'd never see. A world of yacht decks, borrowed diamonds, foreign tycoons, sealed folders, and a nickname that won't go away. Duchess of Yacht. By the time we're finished, you'll have heard the names, seen the timelines, felt the contradictions. You'll question the official story. You'll hear from ex-staffers, insiders, former yacht crew, alleged guests, and socialites who now claim they were there. And at the heart of it all, you'll witness the unraveling of an illusion. Not because we want scandal, but because the truth deserves daylight. And this is just the beginning. Because just when Sarah thought she was finished talking, a folder arrived. Anonymous. No return address. And inside, a single photo. Grainy, but unmistakable. Meghan, the yacht, and a man whose face, if proven, could upend everything she's built. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What would you do if a single photograph could shatter someone's public image? Would you hide it? Would you burn it? Or would you leak it? Just loud enough to cause an earthquake, but quiet enough to pretend your hands were clean? Because that's exactly what Sarah Ferguson found herself facing when an anonymous folder slid across her kitchen table in late September. And inside that folder, a photo, one image, unlabeled, undated, but damning in its composition. The kind of photo that, if released, could rewrite narratives, burn bridges, and reignite everything the palace thought it had buried. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's rewind, just a little, back to the whisper that broke the silence. Sarah Ferguson, Fergie to the world, has always walked the tightrope between royalty and rebellion. For decades, she's danced around the edge of acceptability, charming the press one minute and horrifying courtiers the next. But if there's one thing Fergie knows, it's scandal. She's lived it, survived it, weaponized it. So when she sat down at that quiet luncheon in Notting Hill, surrounded by socialites, charity patrons, and a few sharp-eyed society journalists, she knew exactly what she was doing. Or did she? She was in good spirits, one attendee later revealed. Warm, chatty, funny. Classic Fergie. But the moment Meghan's name came up, something shifted. Her smile froze. Her eyes dropped. And then, casually, almost like she was brushing lint off her jacket, she said, "Oh yes, the yacht days." 4 words. That's all it took. The room stopped breathing. The air changed. Someone laughed nervously. Another woman blinked in confusion. What yacht days? One guest finally asked. Fergie paused, lifted her wine glass, and said nothing. But the damage was done. Because when Sarah Ferguson, former royal, former duchess, former tabloid lightning rod, casually references your alleged pre-royal reputation in public, it's not a gaffe. It's a grenade. And within 48 hours, the whispers had returned. Let's talk about those whispers. They never really died, did they? For years, they hovered, like cigarette smoke, in the corners of forums, blind items, and untraceable gossip chains. Rumors of Meghan's involvement in exclusive yacht parties. Stories that connected her to Soho House, to Hollywood gatekeepers, to wealthy businessmen from the Gulf states and European royalty. But they were always just that, rumors. Until now. Because what no one knew at that luncheon was that Sarah Ferguson had already seen the folder. That just 3 weeks earlier, someone, an anonymous courier, had delivered it to her Berkshire estate. No explanation. No note. Just a sleek black folder, stamped with a gold emblem and sealed with wax. Inside, documents, clippings, and one photo. A photo that, once seen, could not be unseen. Sources close to Sarah say she didn't open it immediately, that it sat, untouched, for days on a side table in her study. Until one night, curiosity got the better of her. And that was when everything changed. Because the moment Fergie laid eyes on that image, she knew exactly who it was. Meghan, on a yacht, wearing a sleek black one-piece, standing near the railing, laughing with a man whose face had been discreetly blurred. But the background, the background, was unmistakable. The flag, the yacht's name, the coastal outline of Monaco behind her. This wasn't some random vacation snapshot. It was a receipt. And for someone like Sarah, who spent decades dodging scandals and headlines, it was clear what this meant. Leverage. Or a warning, depending on who you asked. But why Meghan? Why now? Why would Sarah, who's made a career out of staying diplomatically neutral, suddenly dip her toe into one of the most explosive narratives in modern royal history? The answer, it seems, lies in betrayal. Because while the public sees Meghan and Fergie as distant royal in-laws, the truth is, their relationship was once far more intricate. They weren't close, but they weren't strangers either. And according to insiders, Meghan sought out Fergie in the early days of her royal courtship. Perhaps out of respect, perhaps out of strategy. Meghan wanted allies, a former Palisades said. She knew Diana was gone, knew Camilla wasn't accessible, and she saw Sarah as someone who understood scandal, someone who'd been chewed up by the tabloids and spit out. She thought Fergie could be an asset. For a time, Sarah played the game, offered polite guidance, smiled for the cameras, even defended Meghan subtly in interviews, praising her strength and modern perspective. But something changed. Some say it was after Meghan allegedly blocked a joint charity appearance that Sarah had been pitching for years. A children's literacy event backed by major American sponsors. Others say it was more personal. Sarah felt used, one source claimed. She opened her door, offered support, and then watched as Meghan climbed past her and pulled the ladder up behind her. Whatever the truth, by 2023, the cracks had turned to fractures. And when that folder arrived, Fergie wasn't just a spectator anymore. She was holding a match. And the tabloids? They were drenched in gasoline. Now let's talk about that folder. Who sent it? Why? And what else was inside? We don't have all the answers yet. But what we do know is chilling. Because the emblem on the folder? It wasn't royal. It was private. Exclusive. The mark of a Mediterranean-based yacht brokerage known for discretion, luxury, and silence. A company that's been linked, anecdotally, to some of the most powerful men in the world. Oligarchs, oil heirs, decommissioned royalty. They don't advertise. They don't do Instagram. And they definitely don't leave paper trails. So the fact that their insignia was on a folder containing a photo of Meghan Markle, that's no accident. It's a message. One that says, we know, and we remember. Let's pause here and ask the real question. What does this all mean? Is this a character assassination? A coordinated takedown? Or a long overdue reckoning? Because for years, Meghan has curated an image, carefully, methodically, beautifully. From the Oprah interview to the Netflix docuseries, she's painted herself as a woman betrayed by the firm. A mother, a humanitarian, a survivor. And maybe she is all those things. But what if she's also something else? What if there's another chapter, unpublished, unverified, but real? What if the woman who once lit up the cover of Vanity Fair was also the same woman who lit up private yacht decks in Cannes, posing for billionaires, shaking hands with silent investors, sipping rose under names no one dares mention? It's not about shame. It's about truth. Because a duchess isn't born. She's built. And Meghan Markle? She built herself from the ground up. That takes power. That takes charm. That takes strategy. But it also takes secrets. And secrets, as we all know, don't stay buried forever. Especially when Sarah Ferguson starts talking. Here's what we know so far. Sarah Ferguson made a cryptic comment at a private lunch that reignited years-old rumors. An anonymous folder was delivered to her estate containing a photo of Meghan on a yacht, allegedly tied to a controversial social circle. Sarah had history with Meghan, one that soured after professional overlap and personal cold shoulders. The folder bears the emblem of an elite yacht company known for dealing with power brokers and maintaining strict NDAs. But this isn't where the story ends. In fact, it's where it begins. Because Sarah didn't just receive the photo. She made a call. Not to a tabloid, not to the palace, but to someone far more dangerous. A former yacht chef. The one person who was there in 2015. The one person who saw what the camera didn't capture. And what he said next would change everything. What do you really know about Soho House? A trendy members-only club? A haven for creatives and influencers? Or something far more secretive? What if Soho House wasn't just where Meghan Markle met her inner circle, but where her entire transformation began? Because behind the exposed brick walls and minimalist cocktails lies a network. And some say a pipeline. A place where introductions aren't just social, they're strategic. And where a former cable TV actress found herself plucked, polished, and presented to the world's elite like a new luxury brand about to launch. Welcome to the Shadow Network. Before there was a duchess, there was an actress. And before there was royalty, there was Soho House. Founded in 1995 by Nick Jones in London, Soho House began as a members-only club for artists, writers, and media types. Think less black tie, more creative cool. But by the mid-2010s, something shifted. Money moved in. Soho House wasn't just for quirky directors anymore. It became the playground of billionaires in skinny jeans and supermodels who sipped their green juices while booking private jets on their phones. And somewhere in that mix was Meghan Markle. By 2013, Meghan had been cast in Suits and had a modest following. But Suits wasn't scandal. It wasn't Game of Thrones. It was mid-tier. Respectable, sure, but forgettable. So how did a little-known actress leapfrog her way into London's highest circles? 2 words, Marcus Anderson. If Soho House is a network, Marcus Anderson is the switchboard. Tall, stylish, and impeccably discreet, Anderson is more than just a global membership director. He's the man behind the curtain, the fixer, the gatekeeper. He decides who gets in, and more importantly, who meets whom. And Meghan? She was close with him. Very close. So close, in fact, that sources say Marcus was the one who arranged many of Meghan's early introductions in London, including, yes, allegedly, Prince Harry. But Anderson's influence extended far beyond royals. He was known for organizing intimate gatherings for elite clientele, weekend getaways, off-the-record dinners, yacht excursions with hand-picked guests. Marcus has a list, one ex-Soho staffer revealed. A private list. Women who were smart, beautiful, articulate, and available. Not in a transactional way, but flexible, open to opportunities, socially fluid. Was Meghan on that list? That's the million-dollar question. Because according to more than one source, Meghan attended several of Marcus's curated events between 2014 and 2016. And at least 2 of those events took place on yachts. Let's talk about these yachts. They weren't typical party boats. We're talking floating palaces docked in Cannes, Saint-Tropez, and Sardinia, owned by discreet financiers, entertainment moguls, and, in at least one case, a Middle Eastern prince. Invites were rare, selective, curated like a fashion campaign. And Meghan? She got the call more than once. The Soho House yacht circuit wasn't about hedonism. It was about networking at the highest levels. Business deals, discreet flirtations, introductions. Every moment calculated. Every guest vetted. One staffer described it as LinkedIn with rose and bikinis. Except LinkedIn doesn't have non-disclosure agreements. These yachts did. Every guest signed one. Some even had phones locked away on boarding. So how do we know Meghan was there? Because someone broke the silence. Meet Laura. Not her real name. A former hospitality coordinator for a prominent yacht that hosted several Soho Link parties in 2015. She reached out to a royal blogger anonymously, and her claims sent shockwaves. I was told to prep a guest cabin for someone new, she wrote. Canadian-American. Actress. Short notice. Special dietary requirements. And I was told, treat her like a client, not a guest. That was unusual. When asked what she meant, Laura elaborated. Usually the yacht girls were clearly there for ambience. Models. Influencers. Arm candy. But this one, she had presence. She didn't just flirt. She held court. Then came the kicker. She introduced herself as Meghan. Said she was on Suits. But when the main guest, an older European media tycoon, arrived, she switched. Voice. Posture. She was working the room like a campaign. Laura said Meghan only stayed one night. But the next morning, Marcus called the crew. Said she made a good impression. Said she'd be on more guest lists. This wasn't a scandal. This was a strategy. Let's pause here and really think about this. Does any of this mean Meghan did anything wrong? Not necessarily. She was ambitious. Socially savvy. A woman in her 30s navigating a cutthroat industry with poise and adaptability. But there's a difference between networking and narrative. Between presenting yourself as an empowered actress and presenting yourself as a future royal who came out of nowhere, unconnected, untainted by the elite world. Because if these yacht events happened, and if Meghan participated knowingly, they paint a very different picture of her rise. A picture carefully curated, then rebranded. And the engine behind that rebrand? Soho House. Why is this important? Because Soho House wasn't just a place Meghan visited. It became part of her brand. She mentioned it in interviews. Attended their events long after marrying Harry. Even had their people, like Marcus, at her wedding. And yet, no one talks about what Soho House really represents. It's not just a club. It's a filter. A gateway into power. A place where influencers meet oligarchs. Where producers meet starlets. Where PR agents match clients like chess pieces. And Meghan? She mastered the game. Before she ever stepped foot in Buckingham Palace. Before the veil. Before the Oprah tears. There was the yacht. And there was Marcus. And there was a plan. What makes this so explosive is the silence around it. Because for years, anyone who tried to talk about Meghan's Soho connections got shut down. Bloggers were threatened. Posts were deleted. Even anonymous Reddit threads were mysteriously scrubbed. Why? Why would an elite club care so much about protecting an actress-turned-duchess? Unless the truth was just too inconvenient. Because once you start pulling threads, the whole tapestry unravels. You find other women, other stories, patterns, and suddenly, it's not just about Meghan. It's about the system. A system where women are selected, guided, and, if they're lucky, placed. And if they aren't, they vanish. But Meghan didn't vanish. She rose. She became a global icon. And that rise? It started quietly at Soho House. And now, that same network may be turning. Because silence only works for so long. When Sarah Ferguson made that comment, she wasn't just reminiscing. She was sending a signal. To the courtiers. To the media. To Meghan. I know what you were before the pearls. And Meghan? She knows the walls are closing in. Because just last week, a second photo emerged. One that wasn't in the folder Fergie received. One that appeared in a private WhatsApp group tied to an old yacht crew. Same year. Same background. Same smile. But this time, Meghan wasn't alone. She was standing next to a man whose face is very, very familiar. A man who's made public statements defending her. A man with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And the moment that photo hits daylight, the narrative collapses. But before we get there, we need to understand something else. Because Soho House may have introduced Meghan to power. But the list? That mysterious, controversial list of 135 names? That came from a very different place. And the man who compiled it? He kept every detail, every name, every alias. And he's ready to talk. What kind of person keeps a list of 135 names? Not a romantic, not a dreamer. No, the person who compiles a list like that isn't interested in love stories. They're interested in leverage. And when that list appeared, 135 men, all tied to the same mysterious web of events. It wasn't printed on gossip blogs or scrawled on napkins. It was sealed in a sleek, black folder, the kind used for private briefings, classified files, or payoffs. And when Sarah Ferguson opened that folder, she didn't just see names. She saw reputations. She saw stories the public had never heard. She saw Meghan Markle, code name, Emerald Dove, listed right there, wedged between billionaires, actors, and at least one European royal. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a record. And the man who created it? He's no stranger to secrets. Let's start with the folder itself. The infamous black folder. Delivered without warning. No return address. No note. Just the golden emblem stamped in the center. A lion wrapped around an anchor. Subtle. Elegant. Old world. At first glance, it looked like it could belong to a private equity firm or a legacy yacht manufacturer. But those in the know recognized it immediately. It belonged to Argent Mariner, a boutique security and lifestyle solutions firm operating out of Monaco and Dubai. Never advertised. Never public. But whispered about in hotel corridors, private jet terminals, and post-film festival after-parties. Argent Mariner didn't just vet people. They documented them. Movements, preferences, weaknesses, connections. They were hired by billionaires to keep track of guests, escorts, entertainers, even up-and-coming influencers, for reputation protection, for legal indemnity, and sometimes for future favors. One of their former lead operatives, known only by the alias Gabriel, compiled that folder. And according to sources, he kept copies. Let's talk about Gabriel. He's a ghost. No last name. No public LinkedIn. No photo trail. But insiders say he operated between Europe, the Gulf, and Los Angeles from 2011 to 2018. His specialty? Social indexing, which is a fancy term for cataloging who partied with whom, when, and under what terms. But it went deeper than that. He tracked NDAs, photographic evidence, digital footprints, deleted tweets, buried blog posts, metadata from yacht security cameras. And in 2015, after a particularly eventful summer, Gabriel compiled a document. Internally, it was referred to as Client Risk Assessment, Q3/high-profile female guests. Externally, it became known, informally, as the list. And Meghan Markle's name appeared. Codename, Emerald Dove. Now pause. Breathe. Let's get one thing clear. Appearing on that list does not mean criminal behavior. It doesn't mean prostitution, or trafficking, or illegal conduct. But it does mean you were there. You were part of an elite, closed-door ecosystem where every movement was observed, recorded, and cataloged. Because when you're in the presence of billionaires with reputations to protect, nothing is casual. Every smile, every interaction, every evening swim under moonlight, it's all part of the data. So why was Meghan on the list? According to Gabriel's leaked index notes, she appeared at 3 documented events between July 2014 and August 2016. All yacht-based, all Monaco or kin-adjacent. At least one event was organized by a hospitality group affiliated with Soho House. And at each event, she made an impression. Intelligent, charming, high engagement with VIPs, strong command of cultural conversation, Hollywood aligned. Those were the words used in the entry. It reads more like a casting brief than a scandal sheet. But then comes the kicker. Recommended for re-invite. Possibility of upward mobility within elite circles. That one line, cold, mechanical, tells us everything. This wasn't a party. This was a vetting ground. And Meghan passed. So what about the 135? Who were they? That part remains mostly sealed. But what we do know, thanks to one leak, is that the names were categorized. By industry. By influence. By geography. There was a Hollywood cluster. 3 A-list actors, 2 major producers, 1 streaming executive. A British elite group, 2 former political donors, 1 noble family member. And then there was the Monaco set. Oil magnates, a shipping heir, a crypto pioneer, and the infamous Emirati twins who once tried to fund a European version of Soho House, complete with a rotating guest list of models and actresses. Was Meghan romantically involved with all of them? Unlikely. Was she professionally connected? Possibly. Was she presented to them? That's the question that turns everything on its head. Because if Meghan wasn't just attending these gatherings, but being curated for them, it rewrites her origin story entirely. She didn't find Prince Harry. She was placed near him, after being tested, selected, prepared, and whether she knew it or not. That list shows she was part of a network that plays a far longer game than most people realize. Let's stop and ask the uncomfortable question. Why would someone like Gabriel leak this now? Why would he risk his anonymity? And why send it to Sarah Ferguson? Theories abound. Some say Sarah paid for it. Others say it was a warning shot. Still others believe Gabriel had grown disillusioned with the elite protection racket, that he wanted the world to know just how many public figures had origins that weren't as organic as their PR claimed. But sources close to the York camp say it was personal, that the folder didn't just include Meghan, that somewhere in the depths of that file were connections to someone close to Sarah, a daughter, a friend, a past acquaintance who had been damaged, discarded, or discredited. And Sarah? She wanted accountability, not just gossip, retribution. Inside that folder, beyond the list, were receipts, photos, itineraries, yacht rosters, signed NDAs, some redacted, some not. And in the middle of the stack, an email, dated July 2015, from a yacht events coordinator to a client's assistant. Subject line: approved guest profiles for Côte d'Azur Sailing Week. And on the attachment, 6 names. One of them, MM/US/34/media-ready/strong interpersonal charm, exudes composure, subtlety advised. No last name, but the initials, the age, the profile. It doesn't take a genius. This wasn't just a social guest list. It was a marketing pitch. So the question becomes, was Meghan aware? Did she know how she was being positioned? Or was she simply another name, inserted, moved, observed, and removed? That answer depends on who you ask. Some former insiders claim Meghan was savvy, that she knew the score, that she used the opportunities to build her Rolodex. Others insist she was naive, that she thought she was networking, not auditioning. But regardless of her intent, the documentation remains. And the list? That black folder? It's circulating, silently, strategically, waiting for someone bold enough to print it. What does all this mean for Meghan now? Publicly, nothing. Not yet. The mainstream media won't touch this, at least, not until hard proof leaks. Her legal team is aggressive. Her defenders are loud. And her platform is powerful. But behind the scenes, the tremors have started. Invites rescinded. Brand deals paused. One Netflix executive allegedly flagged her next project as sensitive exposure risk. And there are whispers, only whispers, that a certain podcast host is considering retracting an episode out of an abundance of caution. Because the fear isn't just about what's true. It's about what could become undeniable. And if even half of what's in that folder becomes public record, the Duchess of rebranding becomes the Duchess of receipts. And Sarah? She's quiet now. No more lunches. No more sound bites. But friends say she's watching closely. Waiting. Because she didn't leak the folder. She doesn't need to. She just has to sit back and let gravity do its work. Because reputations fall faster than secrets rise. And Meghan's carefully built image? It just took a hit no palace statement can spin. But before we reach the fallout, we need to hear from the people who were there. The ones who served on the yachts. Who cooked the meals. Managed the cabins. Watched from the shadows. Because one of them just broke a decade of silence. And what they reveal might be the most damning testimony yet. What if the truth you've been searching for was never buried, just ignored, not behind palace walls or hidden in encrypted emails, but whispered on the docks of Monaco, in the kitchen galleys of floating palaces, in the late-night smoke breaks between the crew who weren't guests, weren't elites, weren't insiders, but who saw everything? The yacht staff, the chefs, the stewards, the deckhands, people who had no stake in the game, only the burden of memory. And now? Some of them are finally speaking out. Because the stories they tell, they don't match the fairy tale. They don't match the Netflix narrative. They match the list. They match the folder. They match her. And when you hear what they saw, what they remember, it might change everything you thought you knew about Meghan Markle. His name isn't really Marco. But for the sake of what's about to be revealed, let's call him that. He was a deckhand in 2015 aboard the Lorraine d'Or. A sleek, ultra-modern yacht that docked regularly in Cannes, Nice, and Capri. Marco was 24 then, freshly certified, eager, grateful to have landed a role on a vessel known for discretion and extreme luxury. But there was one week he never forgot. Late July, heavy humidity, calm seas. A new roster of guests had arrived, curated by a London-based hospitality liaison who Marco only knew as Eli. Among them, a woman with striking features, mixed heritage, soft-spoken at first. Marco didn't know who she was. Not until one of the other stewards nudged him and whispered, "That's the girl from Suits. American show. Marcus sent her." Marcus. Again. Even on a yacht thousands of miles from London, the name echoed like a shadow. Marco remembered her clearly, not because of her fame, but because of how she moved. She wasn't like the others, he said in a now-deleted anonymous blog post from 2020. Most girls were loud, selfie-obsessed, always watching who was watching them. But she was aware, controlled. She watched the men, read the room. He described her as magnetic, polite to the staff, curious about their roles. "She asked me about sailing," Marco wrote. "No one does that. She wasn't trying to impress us. She was studying." Then he paused, and then she disappeared for 6 hours. Next comes Adele, a former sous chef on the Ariane V, another luxury vessel that often shared docking space with Lorraine d'Or during peak summer months. Adele's recollection is more specific. It was the end of the season, August 2015. One final party before the yacht was to return to dry dock in Toulon. The client? A Russian-Lebanese tech magnate who had quietly invested in several entertainment ventures. The guest list? Curated by a familiar figure, Marcus Anderson. Among the guests was a petite American actress who asked for vegan options but later requested sea bass if it was wild-caught. Adele, intrigued, asked for her name. She smiled and said, "Meghan, like the princess, but not yet." That line stuck with her, because 2 years later, when Meghan Markle became a princess, Adele nearly dropped her wine glass. She knew. Adele told an anonymous interview site in 2018. She said it like it was already written. She remembered more, too. That Meghan left early the next morning, alone. No entourage, no fanfare, just gone, like she'd finished what she came to do. But perhaps the most chilling testimony came from a steward named Jean-Luc. He worked across multiple yachts between 2013 and 2017, often filling in during staff shortages. He called the network fluid, the way certain guests moved from one yacht to another, depending on which VIPs were docked where. And Meghan? He claims he saw her 3 times. Each time, same context, last-minute addition to guest lists. Always through the same liaison. Always calm, confident, composed. But the 3rd time? Something felt different. She was arguing with someone, Jean-Luc wrote in a now private forum for yacht crew veterans. A man, older, British accent. She kept repeating, that wasn't part of the agreement. He told her, "You're getting what you wanted. Stop playing games." Jean-Luc says they noticed him and moved away quickly. But the phrase haunted him. Wasn't part of the agreement. Agreement for what? A party? A placement? A photograph? Nobody knows. But Jean-Luc claims that after that night, Meghan vanished from the rotation. She was gone. No more sightings. No more invitations. Marcus stopped bringing her up. Was she blacklisted? Or had she simply completed the game? Met the right person? Stepped off the board? You may be thinking, all this sounds speculative, circumstantial, convenient. But here's the twist. Each of these former yacht workers, they were contacted recently by the same journalist. An Australian with ties to European shipping logs. He sent them digital versions of the black folder, asked them to review the photos, the names, the dates. All 3, Marco, Adele, and Jean-Luc, confirmed the timelines. The outfits, even the guests. They remembered. Because people on the margins always remember what the powerful forget. And their stories match up, down to the scent of the sunscreen, down to the model of the yacht, down to the signature on the NDAs, Gabriel's. The shadow operative behind the list. The man who knew who was supposed to be where, and what was not supposed to be seen. So here we are. A triangle of memory. A list of 135 names. A folder that made its way into Sarah Ferguson's hands. And now, a growing number of crew members who are no longer afraid to speak. Why? Because the game has changed. Meghan's no longer protected by the palace. She's exposed. Vulnerable. navigating a world of media without the iron curtain of royal silence behind her. And when that curtain drops, the ghosts walk in, and the ghosts are talking. There's one more story, from a young stewardess named Alina. She was 19 when she met Meghan on a dock in Port Hercules. Alina wasn't assigned to Meghan's yacht, but she remembered her. She wasn't loud, but she was aware of everyone. Like a politician. The part that stood out? She took a photo with me. Said, "You'll want this one day." I thought it was arrogant. 3 years later, Meghan married Prince Harry. Alina posted the photo online. A fan account took it. A day later, her post was gone. Account deleted. Email flooded. A private message arrived from a legal rep urging removal due to privacy infringement. Alina never reposted it. She didn't need to. She'd already seen what the world hadn't. The before. The woman before the Duchess. Let's ask the question directly. Why would Meghan, poised, ambitious, well-spoken, choose to participate in a world like this? A world of curated guest lists, secret arrangements, hidden networks? The answer may be simpler than we think. Because for women in Hollywood, especially women of color, the traditional doors weren't just closed. They were bolted shut. And sometimes, the only way into the rooms that mattered was through side doors, or decks, or curated cocktails on yachts no one's supposed to talk about. It doesn't make it right. It makes it real. But it also makes it dangerous. Because once you play in that world, once your name is on the list, you don't control the story anymore. And if someone else does, they can rewrite your entire legacy with a single leak. Meghan knows this. That's why she stays silent. No comment. No lawsuits. Just silence. Because denial invites documentation. And documentation? It's coming. The witnesses are lined up. The receipts are being verified. And in the background, someone's watching. Someone who remembers more than the staff. Someone who arranged it all. And according to our sources, he's getting nervous. Because if these yacht diaries are real, and if the testimonies match the list, then the man at the center of it all might be forced to take the fall. The gatekeeper, the curator, the one who introduced Meghan to that world, Marcus Anderson. And what he says next could blow this entire scandal wide open. What if the key to unraveling the Duchess's origin story was hiding in plain sight? Not in a scandalous photo, not in a lost diary, not in a whisper from a yacht steward, but in a man, tall, smooth, impeccably dressed, always in the background. Never the star of the photo, but always near the power. You've probably seen him. Maybe in the corner of Meghan's wedding reception. Maybe standing behind her during a charity gala. Maybe sliding out of frame on that infamous Invictus Games walkthrough. His name? Marcus Anderson. Friend. Confidant. Soho House executive. But to some insiders, he's far more than that. They call him the architect, the one who designed Meghan's social ascent. And if the rumors are true, he didn't just help her rise. He made sure she knew exactly who to meet, when to smile, and what to say. So the question is simple. Was Marcus Anderson the helpful friend? Or the puppet master of an elaborate social operation? Let's pull the string. Marcus and Meghan's friendship goes back years. Not months. Years. Well before Prince Harry. Before London. Before Suits had even become a talking point outside Toronto. He wasn't just part of her circle. He built her circle. And unlike many of Meghan's former friends, Marcus has never sold her out. Never gone public. Never leaked a story. But silence isn't always innocence. Sometimes it's strategy. And Marcus? He's nothing if not strategic. Let's look at his position. Marcus Anderson is not just a global membership director at Soho House. That's the title on paper. But his real role? Matchmaker. Social concierge. Power broker. He decides who gets into what event, who's seated where, who gets that precious access to the quiet lounge on the top floor of Soho House Istanbul, or the private beach cabanas in Mykonos. He knows everyone. From tech giants to startup funders. From B-list actresses to billionaire divorcees. He's the go-to for those who want discretion with their networking. And Meghan? She became his showcase. His most successful placement. The woman he helped maneuver from Hollywood fringe to the gates of Buckingham Palace. Insiders claim that between 2014 and 2016, Marcus arranged Meghan's access to over 30 private events. Most of them under the Soho House umbrella. Some were curated brunches. Others were invitation-only yacht weekends. But what stands out? The pattern. Each event had a purpose. Introduce Meghan to someone new. Position her alongside rising influencers. Pair her with financial backers looking for clean, fashionable connections. And, critically, remove her from Hollywood typecasting. One staffer who worked under Marcus in 2015 described it this way. She was a project. Polished. Rebranded. Moved from actress to humanitarian. From red carpets to royal circles. Marcus didn't just help her network. He redirected her brand. That's not friendship. That's engineering. And here's where it gets more calculated. According to a source close to a former Soho House executive, Marcus kept what they referred to as a Tier 1 list. Women he believed could be strategically placed in high-value social settings. Not for exploitation, not for escorting, but for access. The criteria? Beauty with brains. Strong social instincts. No public scandals. Willingness to pivot narratives. And Meghan? She wasn't just on the list. She was at the top. He saw in her what many casting directors missed. Not a breakout actress, but a malleable archetype. Someone who could shift from fashion ambassador to feminist activist to media darling, depending on the crowd. And so he guided her. Not with contracts. With connections. Not with scripts. With scenarios. Some say Marcus introduced Meghan to Prince Harry. Others say he just placed her close enough for it to seem like fate. Either way, he was at the center. Present at their first joint public appearance. Photographed sitting next to Meghan during early events. Quietly helping craft the narrative. And when Meghan's star rose, Marcus stayed right there. No interviews. No comments. Just presence. A shadow in her spotlight. But things got complicated. Because if Marcus orchestrated Meghan's ascent, what else did he arrange? Who else did he place her near? Backtrack to the black folder. To those yacht events between 2014 and 2016. Marcus's name appears repeatedly in the logistics files. Guest coordination. Travel confirmations. Even dietary notes submitted on behalf of Meghan. It's all there. Emails signed off with his initials. Requests filed through his London assistant. And then there's the WhatsApp message. Leaked by a former yacht coordinator. Sent in 2015. From Marcus to a discreet contact. She knows what to do. She's trained. Trained for what? Trained to navigate? Trained to charm? Or trained to be seen? You're probably wondering, was Meghan aware? Was she complicit? Or simply trusting? According to a former friend, Meghan believed Marcus was her guardian angel. He got her into rooms she'd never dreamed of. She didn't question the motives. She trusted him completely. But others suggest she knew more. That by 2015, Meghan had begun to anticipate the game. That she wasn't just attending curated events. She was using them. Fashionably late arrivals. Strategic selfies. Targeted flattery. One source put it bluntly. She played chess while everyone else played checkers. And Marcus? He was the board. Fast forward to today. Marcus still works with Soho House. Still appears occasionally with Meghan. But the optics are different. He's quieter. Less public. And some say more nervous. Because if this story unravels, if the receipts continue piling up, then Marcus's carefully maintained illusion of discretion collapses. He goes from gatekeeper to suspect. From friend to facilitator. And that's a role that comes with consequences, especially when NDAs expire, when former yacht guests start naming names, and when one photo in that black folder shows Marcus and Meghan laughing with a Saudi telecom heir on a yacht registered under a shell company linked to a known nightlife investor. That photo, it hasn't been published yet, but it's circulating among journalists, among legal teams, among the very same media outlets Meghan once charmed. And when it leaks, the backlash won't just hit her. It'll hit him. So where does that leave us? With a man who played kingmaker and might now become a liability. With a woman who owes her royal title to a path no one's supposed to trace. And with a network, Soho House, that may be scrambling to scrub every trace of how it all happened. But the truth? It's out. It's in the testimonies, in the lists, in the photos, in the folder. And now, thanks to one brave former ally, it may be in the headlines soon. Because Marcus isn't the only one who knew. There was another figure behind Meghan's transformation. A woman who welcomed her into the yacht scene. Who shaped her brand. Who trained her posture. Who taught her to move like a duchess before she ever became one. And according to recent leaks, she just signed a book deal. And Chapter 1 is called The Monaco Incident. Every socialite knows Monaco is where masks slip. Under the blinding sun and behind the mirrored sunglasses, reputations are made or destroyed in a single weekend. And in the summer of 2015, something happened on a yacht dock just off the Port Hercule Marina. An incident, one that was quietly buried, never printed, never confirmed, but whispered, always whispered, among former yacht guests, among Soho House coordinators, among the diplomatic wives who lunch in Knightsbridge and remember everything. It became known, almost mythically, as the Monaco incident. And if the stories are true, it was the night Meghan Markle went too far. Or perhaps, not far enough. Picture this. It's August 2015. The scene has died down. St. Tropez is quieting. The final jewel of the summer circuit is the Monaco Yacht Show preview weekend, where money and status meet under a veil of exclusivity. Only a select few yachts are invited to dock. The rest sit just offshore, bobbing gently, waiting to be noticed. On one of those yachts, sponsored discreetly by a private holding group from the UAE, a guest list was being finalized. 6 high-profile men, 3 female cultural ambassadors, and 1 last-minute addition, Meghan Markle. Sources say she arrived on a speedboat around 6:30 p.m., wearing a white silk halter dress, hair pulled back, makeup dewy and minimal. She stepped aboard with quiet confidence, unbothered, unflinching, but not unnoticed. She made an impression, said a former guest, speaking anonymously, not because she was loud, but because she knew how to arrive. She wasn't the star of the party, but she was a story waiting to be told, and that's exactly what made her dangerous. The host that night was Sheikh Khalid Al Hussein, mid-40s, tech investor, discreet player in Gulf entertainment circles, known for funding indie film projects, fashion weeks, and the occasional boutique PR scandal cleanup. He wasn't there to party. He was there to shop. Not for yachts. Not for watches. For alliances. Connections. Women who could carry a message, build soft power, or add sparkle to certain foreign press initiatives. Think diplomacy, but with champagne flutes and curated playlists. That night, Meghan was positioned, intentionally, next to him. They talked. Sources say she impressed him. Quizzed him about Silicon Oasis, a Dubai startup ecosystem. Mentioned humanitarian causes. Quoted Gloria Steinem. She knew the dance. But then, something changed. An hour in, the sheik's wife arrived. Unexpected. Uninvited. And what happened next? No one agrees completely. But the versions converge on one moment. A confrontation. Sharp words in Arabic. A defensive response from Meghan. And then, a wine glass fell. Not thrown, but dropped. The party paused. Music stopped. And Meghan? She excused herself from the table, returned to her cabin, and by sunrise, she was gone. What really happened? One crew member claims the sheik's wife accused Meghan of performing diplomacy with too much charm. Another says she saw the wife whisper something to an aide, who then spoke to the host. After that, Meghan's demeanor reportedly changed, tense, controlled, but no longer engaged. She shut down, the stewardess said, went from floating to frozen, like a switch. Others say Meghan argued, not loudly, but firmly. She didn't take the insult. She defended herself, said she wasn't there for entertainment, said she was invited as a guest. And then, silence. The rest of the evening unfolded with forced grace. But Meghan never returned to the upper deck. By morning, her luggage was packed. A car was waiting at the dock. She didn't say goodbye, didn't thank the crew. She left. And a week later, her team announced she'd be attending a London charity event, hosted by Cinebale, an event co-hosted by Prince Harry. Was that coincidence? Or course correction? Because what followed was a shift. No more yacht sightings. No more curated placements. Meghan's appearances moved from luxury decks to low-lit cafes. From Dubai investors to British philanthropy. It was as if the social campaign had flipped strategy overnight. And who orchestrated that pivot? You guessed it. Marcus Anderson. So why did the Monaco incident matter? Because according to a leaked internal report from Argent Mariner, the fallout was swift. Meghan's name was downgraded in the index. From Tier 1, high placement potential, to Tier 3, social risk/unresolved conflict. That reclassification? It wasn't just an internal flag. It was a signal to every client in the network. Proceed with caution. But that caution didn't last long. Because Meghan wasn't deterred. She reappeared in London weeks later, branded differently. Not as a socialite, not as a yacht muse, but as a thinker. She started giving speeches at small nonprofit events, releasing blog posts about gender equality. She reintroduced herself, not to billionaires, but to British cultural tastemakers. And somehow, she got their attention. But behind the scenes, the Monaco whispers followed her, especially when one of the guests that night, a minor British aristocrat, mentioned the event in a private message to his cousin, a cousin who happened to work at Kensington Palace. And that's when the risk profile changed. Let's be clear, there is no hard evidence that the Monaco incident directly affected Meghan's royal path. But what we do know is this. Her social trajectory changed after Monaco. Her brand strategy shifted after Monaco. Her distance from Marcus Anderson increased after Monaco. And her first connection to Prince Harry was confirmed shortly after Monaco. Coincidence? Perhaps. But insiders believe that incident marked the end of Meghan's yacht phase and the beginning of something far more calculated, a royal rebrand. And yet, the Monaco incident didn't disappear, because while Meghan ascended, that guest list remained archived in the black folder, stamped, filed, copied. And that guest list? It wasn't just about Meghan. It included another woman, an older woman, an American with ties to multiple placement girls across 3 Mediterranean circuits, a woman who went by many names, but whose real name eventually surfaced in the documents. And when investigators traced her, they found something even more shocking, a connection to Meghan's team, an unofficial consultant, a brand advisor, who allegedly arranged discreet career pathway advisories, including yacht placements, including that Monaco evening. And if that's true, then the Monaco incident wasn't an accident. It was a test, one Meghan barely passed. And the person who set that test? She's ready to speak, because she just signed a publishing deal. And in her opening chapter, she doesn't name names. She uses initials. But one set of initials stands out. MM, the most polished of them all. But she forgot one thing. On a yacht, everyone's watching, even the ones you think are below deck. So here's the reality. Meghan Markle's rise may have been shaped by curated positioning, calculated introductions, and narrative reinvention. But every rise has its rupture. And Monaco was the rupture. The moment the game shifted. The moment she realized the social carousel had limits. And that if she wanted to be untouchable, she'd need a crown, not a cocktail dress. She'd need a title, not a placement. And somehow, within a year, that's exactly what she got. But the shadows of Monaco still trail behind her. In emails, in rosters, in whispers. And one of the guests from that night? He's no longer silent. He's working with a journalist. One who has photos, screenshots, audio. And if that journalist publishes what we believe he's sitting on, it won't just rock Meghan's reputation. It will explode everything she's built. Because the man in that photo with her is now part of her media empire. And he swore he'd never met her before 2017. What do you really know about Soho House? A trendy members-only club? A haven for creatives and influencers? Or something far more secretive? What if Soho House wasn't just where Meghan Markle met her inner circle, but where her entire transformation began? Because behind the exposed brick walls and minimalist cocktails lies a network. And some say a pipeline. A place where introductions aren't just social, they're strategic. And where a former cable TV actress found herself plucked, polished, and presented to the world's elite like a new luxury brand about to launch. Welcome to the Shadow Network. Before there was a duchess, there was an actress. And before there was royalty, there was Soho House. Founded in 1995 by Nick Jones in London, Soho House began as a members-only club for artists, writers, and media types. Think less black tie, more creative cool. But by the mid-2010s, something shifted. Money moved in. Soho House wasn't just for quirky directors anymore. It became the playground of billionaires in skinny jeans and supermodels who sipped their green juices while booking private jets on their phones. And somewhere in that mix was Meghan Markle. By 2013, Meghan had been cast in Suits and had a modest following. But Suits wasn't scandal. It wasn't Game of Thrones. It was mid-tier. Respectable, sure, but forgettable. So how did a little-known actress leapfrog her way into London's highest circles? 2 words, Marcus Anderson. If Soho House is a network, Marcus Anderson is the switchboard. Tall, stylish, and impeccably discreet, Anderson is more than just a global membership director. He's the man behind the curtain, the fixer, the gatekeeper. He decides who gets in, and more importantly, who meets whom. And Meghan? She was close with him. Very close. So close, in fact, that sources say Marcus was the one who arranged many of Meghan's early introductions in London, including, yes, allegedly, Prince Harry. But Anderson's influence extended far beyond royals. He was known for organizing intimate gatherings for elite clientele, weekend getaways, off-the-record dinners, yacht excursions with hand-picked guests. Marcus has a list, one ex-Soho staffer revealed. A private list. Women who were smart, beautiful, articulate, and available. Not in a transactional way, but flexible, open to opportunities, socially fluid. Was Meghan on that list? That's the million-dollar question. Because according to more than one source, Meghan attended several of Marcus's curated events between 2014 and 2016. And at least 2 of those events took place on yachts. Let's talk about these yachts. They weren't typical party boats. We're talking floating palaces docked in Cannes, Saint-Tropez, and Sardinia, owned by discreet financiers, entertainment moguls, and, in at least one case, a Middle Eastern prince. Invites were rare, selective, curated like a fashion campaign. And Meghan? She got the call more than once. The Soho House yacht circuit wasn't about hedonism. It was about networking at the highest levels. Business deals, discreet flirtations, introductions. Every moment calculated. Every guest vetted. One staffer described it as LinkedIn with rose and bikinis. Except LinkedIn doesn't have non-disclosure agreements. These yachts did. Every guest signed one. Some even had phones locked away on boarding. So how do we know Meghan was there? Because someone broke the silence. Meet Laura. Not her real name. A former hospitality coordinator for a prominent yacht that hosted several Soho-linked parties in 2015. She reached out to a royal blogger anonymously, and her claims sent shockwaves. I was told to prep a guest cabin for someone new, she wrote. Canadian-American. Actress. Short notice. Special dietary requirements. And I was told, treat her like a client, not a guest. That was unusual. When asked what she meant, Laura elaborated. Usually the yacht girls were clearly there for ambience. Models. Influencers. Arm candy. But this one? She had presence. She didn't just flirt. She held court. Then came the kicker. She introduced herself as Meghan. Said she was on Suits. But when the main guest, an older European media tycoon, arrived, she switched. Voice. Posture. She was working the room like a campaign. Laura said Meghan only stayed one night. But the next morning, Marcus called the crew. Said she made a good impression. Said she'd be on more guest lists. This wasn't a scandal. This was a strategy. Let's pause here and really think about this. Does any of this mean Meghan did anything wrong? Not necessarily. She was ambitious. Socially savvy. A woman in her 30s navigating a cutthroat industry with poise and adaptability. But there's a difference between networking and narrative. Between presenting yourself as an empowered actress and presenting yourself as a future royal who came out of nowhere, unconnected, untainted by the elite world. Because if these yacht events happened, and if Meghan participated knowingly, they paint a very different picture of her rise. A picture carefully curated, then rebranded. And the engine behind that rebrand.